Thing. Boom. All right, we are live on Facebook, and hopefully the sound is coming through well. Please let me know if it's not in the comments. But let me just test that really quick. Okay, well, the folks let us know if the sound's bad, but I think we should be good to go. Folks, thanks for tuning in tonight. We have a really good show for you all today. We have a great conversation with a wonderful guest, Brad, who's with us tonight, does amazing work in our community, and we're so honored to have him on our show to talk to you all and to inform us on a very important and challenging topic here in Flagstaff and across the entire nation and globe today, specifically around the topic of COVID-19 and how we're all kind of stuck at home. So Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. We really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to a very engaged conversation with the public. So folks who are watching from home, please do engage with us and let us know what your comments. We'll take some of those throughout the conversation. But Brad, if you'd like to go ahead and just kind of start us off by a quick introduction and a little overview of the work you do.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to be presenting this really discussion about substance use specifically in COVID in these challenging times. And I want to thank Northern Arizona Mental Health Matters and the LaBelles, Andrea and Jim. I just think this is a great service. And basically about me, I've been a counselor almost 30 years, and I've managed various counseling programs for about 20 of those 30 years. I've also developed some programs. So I'm a real advocate of altruistic and creating good services that help people, not only in Flagstaff, but in Northern Arizona, and trying to do so in a cost-effective way. But I've got two jobs right now. I'm the owner and manager, do a little bit of clinical work at my practice, Mountain Counseling Services. Our mission there is to provide individual counseling, education, and outpatient treatment, really to promote safety and sobriety and healthy behaviors. Then we also provide domestic violence counseling as well to men. Men only, we have a couple men's groups. And then I've got other work that I do at Northern Arizona University at the Family Violence Institute. I work with a program called ACASI, and we give counseling to children and their caregivers that have had a parent murdered in domestic violence cases. I'm a licensed substance abuse counselor, but I'm also a nationally certified domestic violence counselor as well. And I went to school here at NAU, and I am been in Flag close to 30 years, and I live with a daughter. It's a NAU student as well. So I love Flagstaff.
Wow, thanks for that, Brad. That's incredible. I love the field that you've chosen to, focus your life on and focus your time in and your skills and really give back in an area where, can be very dark and challenging to navigate and stay positive and stay motivated, but also can be very rewarding to work in. So I appreciate your focus on that. Can you talk a little bit about, what you're seeing in COVID, like during this period of COVID-19 and this pandemic? What are you seeing in the community, and what are some of the, areas of feedback that you have?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So one of the reasons this timing is really good in this presentation is we have a lot of concerns just about the physical and mental health of people with COVID, and really the isolation, the isolation that people are having forced upon us, and then how that affects our routines, our stress level, and then really our functioning in our mental health. And one of the things I'll throw out a few red flags tonight is, how are we coping with that? There's some healthy ways we can cope with isolation, something most of us don't want to do, but there's some unhealthy ways too. And specifically with substance use, there's some data coming out now saying there's an increase in substance use in COVID, which would make sense that people might be using alcohol or drugs to help cope with the social isolation they're facing, or the unemployment. Our unemployment rate a couple of months ago was one of the lowest it's ever been on record, and we've had millions of people apply for unemployment. So there's going to be additional stresses with that, the health concerns and trying to stay safe and not contact COVID, but also the social changes that come with it, and the employment changes that are forced on some people as well.
on that topic, I've had a lot of conversations on this topic of change and how we're handling the change, both as, leaders in our communities and also as individuals, as part of our communities. And it seems like, anytime there's change, whether it's an organizational change within a government, like in an institution, or, society change, it's difficult for folks to adapt. And it can be very stressful and challenging. People like routines. They like, and it also helps balance us, right? Routines can be very good for us.
Mm-hmm.
And especially during these times, and we can dive into that in a minute about the importance of routines and some examples of what you can be doing at home to stay more mentally sound. But change is difficult. And this is not just your normal change. This is pretty, epic and very stressful and very devastating to a lot of folks. And I mean, this can be life and death for some in our community as well. So, yeah, maybe talk a little bit more about what your recommendations are for folks who are struggling with, substance abuse and such.
I think a good starting place tonight, I talk a little bit about some trends that are going on nationally. I read a great article today from the American Society of Addiction Medicine, or ASAM. Many mental health counselors are very familiar with ASAM. And they came out with an article that had some data. And I just want to share a few of these little bullets here. But they said in the month of March through the 21st, nationally, alcohol sales had increased 55% in that month. Cannabis sales in recreational states had also gone up. Sales are up. And then in Oregon, they had the most sales that they've ever had since they legalized in 2015, where they sold over $84 million in a single month of cannabis in that legal state. But one of the things, for substance use in general, that's a real risk factor is stressors. So it could be stressors with, being unemployed or a failed relationship or health struggles. But these stressors that we're all having forced to deal with COVID really have bumped up, our anxiety levels, our depression, maybe in some cases post-traumatic stress. I thought your presentation with the couple of them, Chris and Mueller, talked and did a great job really focusing on the increased anxiety people are dealing with and some recommended things to cope with the anxiety that comes along with our forced changes. But one of the things with our patterns changing is we want to be careful on how they change. Like, for example, if we were someone and we socially drank like a moderation pattern, we connected with our friends a few times a month, we may continue drinking, but to do so in isolation. And that change in pattern, if we started drinking in isolation on a regular basis, one could develop a substance use disorder. And while behavior patterns are easy to create, they're difficult to break. So it's like sometimes you can get into a behavior pattern over the course of weeks and months, and when you try to, if it becomes unhealthy, breaking that can be exceptionally different. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about folks that are in recovery that may be at the greatest risk of their attempts to stay clean and sober working with COVID. And there are some excellent resources, but once again, people in recovery, like the rest of us, are dealing with this forced change and taken out of their routine. The other thing I wanted to say that I think is important right now is also for people in COVID specifically to be careful about tobacco or marijuana smoking or vaping, because the use of those won't have any impact on whether you get COVID or not. But if you do get COVID, it could make your prognosis worse. Like if you had an infection in your lungs and then you had COVID, COVID could be riskier to someone if you vaped or were a heavier regular tobacco or marijuana smoker. They also nationally, some organizations have come out. There was a meeting at the White House a couple of days ago where they're asking for significant mental health funding, because they believe, a lot of experts in the field believe, that the mental health admissions into programs are going to mirror what physical health admissions have been. So I thought that was really interesting in the article on ASAM, and I just wanted to share that kind of a starting place for tonight.
That's interesting. Wait, so repeat that one more time. That last piece.
So basically, they were saying that they believe that the the amount of admissions that have had for physical health care for people that have contacted COVID and their health matters, that the numbers are going to be mirrored in the mental health system in the weeks and months ahead of us, that there's going to be a whole new group of people going into counseling or rehabilitation programs to work through their anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, or
Right.
substance disorders that they may exacerbate or create because of their consumption patterns trying to cope
Oh, I
with
see.
COVID. That makes sense.
Wow. So let's talk about that individual today who might be watching from home, who is exactly that person, either is working towards recovery or is, I guess every scenario could be a different, game plan in terms of what they could be doing. But what kind of recommendations do you have for someone who is in the middle of, waking up, going through bad behaviors, bad patterns of choices that aren't necessarily good for their mental health or well-being in the long run? It might
Yeah.
be making them more vulnerable or weak to COVID-19, but thinking long run, what are your thoughts to that individual?
Yeah, I think one thing with individuals that like to drink or use recreational drugs, or use hard drugs or prescription drugs if they abuse, is a lot of times people will gravitate towards liking the effects or liking the feeling and some other different things that they might like about use. But usually a person will try to moderate and control their use over time. And it's not till someone usually has a big red flag and experiences some type of crisis that they want to stop or really try to make a decision that maybe abstinence is a better course of action for them to pursue than moderation. Many people that are working recovery programs in their life have had enough bad things happen or have hit some type of rock bottom such that they're trying to abstain. And the more abstinence, usually the better for someone that has a substance use disorder. Now, in saying that, let me give you a good statistic here to kind of start off. If we started with alcohol, 85% of people that drink in the United States never develop a problem in their lifetime. But 15% of people that try alcohol and drink over time do develop a substance use alcohol some point in time in their life. It's that 15% of people that will usually at some point in time maybe commit to abstinence or changing their patterns, stopping or committing to recovery. But that's a long road for someone to get to, even to make the decision that, hey, I'm going to try to abstain from my use, change my pattern, and engage in some activities that will help me maintain my abstinence. The difficulty with COVID's effects on people in recovery is a lot of people will do a recovery routine with regularity in the 7 days of their week. And with our inability to connect with other people, a lot of recovery activity is done in group. Like there's a lot of saying in rehab programs, we do our addiction sometimes, many times in isolation under this veil of secrecy, but good programs will try to have people socially connect to others as they're working on their abstinence. So a person that maybe goes to a support group meeting a few times a week, or they go and meet with their counselor, or they go to a church session or a yoga, with a group of people, is not going to be able to do that. So how can they negotiate that, or how can they create some new recovery routines while we have this continued prohibition against connecting with other people, no pun intended.
So, you really gave me the alley-oop there. So what's the solution? How do we create those routines?
Yeah, so I mentioned several. One of them, I think Kristen said in her presentation, she talked about like eating healthy, exercise, and sleep. And I think that's really good for anyone in recovery, whether COVID or not. I'm a big advocate of, taking good self-care and eating as part of that healthy diet, exercising at least a few times a week to kind of get your blood flowing around your system usually makes you feel good. It usually helps you sleep better. And then I would say a minimum of 6 hours of sleep a night, and even more if you can get that, so you get the deep REM sleep and feel more relaxed the next day.
And do you have any specific? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, specific diets. One of the things I would say that I would just throw out top of my head for people that are in really recovery from alcohol use. It's amazing how many people don't know this or even go to good rehabilitation programs. But a diet that's low in carbohydrates and low in sugars and high in proteins is an excellent diet to have if you're working on recovery from alcohol and total abstinence. It actually decreases cravings over time. There's a good supplement that people in recovery can take called glutamine. Glutamine you can get over the counter. You don't need a prescription, but you could get powder or pills. And glutamine is a sugar stabilizer, and it decreases cravings to drink. So that's a couple things I would mention on diets. And not too much, no alcohol is great. Reducing sugar and caffeine is certainly great too. And I think eating meals, or meals and snacks through the day is good too, but also being careful not to eat too much.
What I was gonna say about that. So, if someone's thinking about reaching for the beer in their fridge or whatever the substance might be versus, something else, what would you want them to think about in that moment to help steer them away from that decision and give them an alternative?
Yeah, maybe something else that they enjoy. I recommend to clients to experiment with different teas. There's a lot of teas, especially in colder months of the year, or juices that they make, like coconut water, teas. I think I'm not a big advocate of sodas because I think sodas have so much sugar in them. Once again, that reducing that sugar intake is important in recovery, but some other healthier beverages are certainly out of there. And there seems to be more choices over time as companies, market products that are non-alcohol related or not like a traditional soda, like a Coke or Pepsi.
And being someone myself who used to enjoy a quality beer, on the daily during a stretch of my life, never thought I had a personal issue with it. And then one day just kind of waking up and totally like being done with it, not because I felt like I was abusing it or it was abusing me, but just out of a personal preference of a feeling and feeling better without it. I can tell you that, being around that culture and being a part of that culture, it was difficult to transition. And I think what really did it for me was, I would just drink a ton of soda waters. And I just it was like that culture of behavior of, just having something to drink and something in your hand and sipping on something. And, that's like one piece of it. And then the other piece is, maybe a little bit deeper, right? It's that mental health and why are you drinking or doing these things in the first place? Are you doing it to escape a reality? Are you doing it to, numb a certain feeling? Are you doing it out of habit? Or are you doing it because you just enjoy the experience of it? Those are like, the reason behind why is really what will come forward at that point. And that's, another process of, seeking resources and getting the help and support that you need. And
there's a real important thing to mention here. So old school in rehabilitation with substance programs, a lot of the older counselors are very familiar with this, but we use the words like dependence and abuse. And now with changes in the last few years, we talk more about a substance use disorder. But with any substance, if we fall into a pattern of daily use of alcohol or daily use of marijuana, or we're abusing prescription drugs that maybe are not prescribed daily, that's a very easy routine, and it promotes getting dependent on it. So it's not a good idea to drink daily, to smoke daily, even if you had a medical card or not. Cannabis is kind of interesting because sometimes people will use it for certain things like pain, where they may use it a couple times a week, but still not necessarily getting into a pattern every day of the week. An interesting stat on marijuana, a lot of people don't know this, but only 5% of people that try marijuana in their life actually get addicted to it. But those people that get addicted to oftentimes do become daily users, and sometimes they smoke multiple times in the course of the day. And I've worked with some patients that will get up and smoke in the morning before they have coffee, in the afternoon, evening, nighttime. I mean, that's not a healthy pattern. And a pattern like that would even be more risky if you were under the age of 25 because of brain development. We know that cannabis, medical cannabis, can do some good things medically for people, like if they have glaucoma or pain relief, cancer. It can actually stimulate your appetite. But it also can do some negative things too, and especially for the heavy users under 25. The amotivational syndrome is significant. It's serious with some people. You're accomplishing less because you're hanging out stoned maybe with frequently. And then the short-term memory loss also can be a factor where people are just spacing things off or their
Mhm.
grades are kind of lowering. And once again, the under 25 heavy users are probably much more at risk than people that are above 25.
Mm.
Yeah.
Huh. So what, yeah, I mean, obviously bringing awareness to one's reality, like, for someone who might be a parent with a child at home today and the child is smoking regularly, like I wonder what that parent can help, do for that child. Maybe, maybe this is a good chance that I can, just show everybody something. Um, Let me do a quick screen share with the group. I want to just show you all something that, um, Flagstaff Resources does, just because this is such a great resource for the community, and um, it just is it just puts the resources for a lot of things in our community at your fingertips. So this is the website, and you go to flagstaffresources.com, and we're actually working on revamping this website as we speak. So we're going to have a whole new face coming very soon. But all the different programs are here on the left, and they're alphabetical. So you can click on any of these, and it opens up, and it gives you more information about what's being offered, and additional resources to that resource. But the main thing I want to just highlight here is the filters. And so you can filter out a lot of different subjects, but let's say COVID-19, like we have a filter for COVID-19, and just click apply. And then you just see a whole range of different topics, but you have everything from mental health to well-being to all sorts of different supports. And then for folks who are younger, and for parents who have youth at home, check out Online Teen Help. This is a great resource that we put together, and just has a bunch of wonderful information and a bunch of free, great things, resources, and very direct support lines of call services and text chats. And there's videos on here. There's just a bunch of good stuff. So this could really help someone get back on a track of recovery, as well as everything else that we're talking about.
Mhm. That looks
Um,
great. That's fantastic. And for the youth, Adam, I think, Flagstaff, we're blessed because we have a lot of good counselors in town. And I think,
mm,
having someone young, rather than getting all their information from their social network or their young friends, sometimes going and talking to a counselor that has a lot of
yeah.
years experience may be helpful. I have parents, not infrequently, that will bring in 18 or 19-year-olds that they fear sometimes that they're maybe smoking real heavily or
Mm,
using other drugs or abusively drinking. And I think talking to a counselor sometimes is a good thing. More dialogue is probably better than that. Once again, the secrecy,
mhm.
I would say.
Yep, yep. I think having those hard conversations are really important, and they can be difficult, especially with like a parent to child dynamic. But it's I think that maybe one of the blessings of COVID-19 is it's partially helping to force that conversation, giving us the time to like go crazy with each other. Maybe if a balance is able to be struck in their lifestyle, they can then have that space to have that kind of conversation and go to those deeper places. Um,
And if there's any youth that are tuning into this presentation, I want to say, being young is a hard thing. It's hard to kind of learn the skills to navigate this world for success. And substance use usually doesn't try to help you in that quest for, finding your niche in the world.
mhm,
Sometimes it can kind of hamper it. And I think one of the times specifically with young substance users is they sometimes don't have, the amount of time that an older individual will to look at patterns and to evaluate them effectively. Someone that's engaged with the substance over a period of time is going to have a much better, more realistic understanding of what the substance may do for them, good and bad, in comparison to someone that's just starting off their first 6 months or year or a couple years. Um, and I know sometimes it's difficult when you're young to listen to older, but in some generations, like
right.
the traditional Native Americans, they honor the wisdom of the elders, and the youth will oftentimes listen to them. And I think some other cultures could benefit from that wisdom that the elders have.
Absolutely. We've become so disconnected, and it's really unfortunate. But this might be a real reality check where we look in the mirror and we evaluate the way we're living and our society operates, and really think about moving forward, how we want to move forward,
Yep.
and what are our new values and such.
Yeah. Another thing on COVID, I think, just to put a little bit of a warning out to folks, is the idle time. Filling our idle time is an important thing in recovery, and too much idle time is difficult. But if one were drinking more, if you're noticing an increase, to fill idle time, to be real careful of that. A good definition of binge drinking is 5 drinks in a day for men or more, and then for women, 4 drinks in a day or more. Now, some people may never even come anywhere near that, but some people will drink more than that on a real regular basis. But binge drinking is not a very healthy thing to do for a lot of reasons, what it can do for your mental health, but also your physical health too, as far as gaining weight or how it might affect your organs. But I wanted,
Absolutely.
if you did find yourself getting into a pattern of regular use, or you were binge drinking or binge smoking, some other things you can do: spend time outdoors. What a wonderful resource we live. I have gratitude almost on a daily basis of living in Flagstaff in northern Arizona. This is one of the most beautiful areas in the country we live in. So we're able to get out. If you can go out on a walk on your lunchtime, or maybe at 5 o'clock, the weather's getting nice, and or get on a bike and ride. And I rode today on my lunch hour. It just made all the difference in making an average day a great day of just being out in the sunshine. A lot of studies on brain imaging have said when we're outside, our brains are stimulated more so than if we stay inside. And I know with me, my days in COVID that have probably been the difficult is when it's colder and I'm in all day, from when I wake 6 or 7 in the morning till when I go to bed. It's such a nice thing to be outdoors and just experience nature.
Fully agree. I fully agree.
Other things that we can do for, to avoid substance use or for recovery is meditation or pray. I wanted to say, I was looking around a couple of years ago. There was 2 years I belonged to Flagstaff Insight Meditation Group. There's a gentleman named Brian. I think Brian's a Buddhist monk, but he's had a group going on Monday nights in the Bell Garden Buddhist Center for many, many years. It's packed every Monday night. And some of the people that go there in recovery, but some are not too, but they're doing online programs right now in COVID to try to help people stay connected. They're still doing their Monday night meditation group on Zoom. And this next week, they also have other activities going on Wednesday night and Thursday night too. And those you can access for free. They don't cost anything. So it's just a fantastic group that's been in Flagstaff for many years. It's reaching out, trying to help a lot of people, especially in difficult times that COVID's presenting for us.
I think that's great, and that's a great resource. And it just reminds me that, we have these tools that, really can distract us and isolate us and divide us, even in our own families. But these tools can also help connect us both to ourselves and to each other. But, for folks who are, just scrolling through, like talking about bad habits, right? Scrolling through news and social media and just doing that to an extreme where it's not healthy and it's not productive. Try switching gears, especially, having like a hard, like after 5 p.m., it is winding down the rest of the evening, right? Or, some kind of line in the sand to help you be able to have that full night's sleep and that deep sleep that you talked about earlier. And utilize this as a good resource to help you calm down, to help you dive inward and reflect, to help you breathe and meditate and really, recenter yourself, because these are hard times. And the truth is, the worst is possibly yet to come. It doesn't seem to be getting better. And it might be a while that we're in the situation that we're in. There's all this talk of opening things up and getting back to life as usual, but honestly, I have a feeling it's going to be a while. And so take this time as an opportunity to really dive in and fine tune yourself, give your body a tune up,
I'm not, it's interesting. Sometimes our greatest growth in life is when we have forced change. So none of us want to do this COVID, but maybe in some ways it's going to make us better people. I'm not saying all of us, but maybe a lot of us, just because sometimes, suffering can build a little bit of character. I mean, I wasn't in the military, but I was looking at an interesting quote today, and the Marine Corps motto is improvise, adapt, and overcome. And for anyone tuning into this presentation, you know, improvise, adapt, and overcome. What can we do to get through these times? And I'm really hoping within a couple months that they kind of lift this prohibition ban on social groups, at least for small groups, and maybe even more so by the middle or late part of summer. But it is difficult. Adam, you have a great point. These devices we have, if you have a smartphone or a computer, what a wonderful resource for recovery. You know, I'm not a tech guy. I'm a kind of old school counselor, and but I can tell you a lot of the counselors and mental health professionals are forced to incorporate technology with COVID. A lot of the counseling centers are still allowing individual counseling through Zoom or telephonic.
Right.
The State Board of Behavioral Health has told all counseling agencies, we want you to keep seeing clients as much as you can because of the need. And then some of the access providers in town have started doing Zoom groups too. They don't have to go through the billing process like some of the private agencies. So some of them have started doing Zoom. So that's, clients can still stay connected with many of the different, I know Cultivate Counseling is doing Zoom. I know Ron Paul is doing Zoom appointments. I had heard just a few days ago that maybe Southwest and the Guidance Center were doing some Zoom groups.
Yeah, the guidance.
Even if we're out of our norm, we can't do as many individual counseling sessions as normal. I think more agencies and more behavioral health professionals will get better at technology over time. The other great resource in Flagstaff, there's over 70 AA meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings every week in Flagstaff, and some of those have gone to Zoom. Not all of them, but there's a 6:45 meeting that meets, actually they're meeting at 7 now, Monday through Saturday. And I've had some clients that say the meetings are sometimes better than they were in person because the more motivated clients are tuning into them, and the less motivated ones aren't. So that's good. There's ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics meetings. I know some people in that program that they're meeting on Zoom weekly. So I would imagine Al-Anon probably has some online resources too. And then there's some other apps I wanted to share with the audience. And these are for the folks in recovery on your smartphone or your computer. I've got 4 mobile apps here for people in recovery. And one is called capital A Chess, CHESS. Another one is called Recovery Box, all one word, Recovery Box. Another one is called Sober Grid, GRID. And then also a 12 Steps AA Companion. So those are just some more mobile apps. We've had these posted at our office for a few years, and the millennials tend to use them more than some of our older clients, but it's just another resource we can tap into in these challenging times. Let's see. The other thing that you can do is, I think in COVID, is really reach out and talk to your social network, people that you trust, whether it's your friends or your family or your lover. Really just talking to people about what your routine is like can be, you know, if you're willing to be vulnerable and be open about that, I think that's a really healthy thing to do. And COVID may also be a good time to write down for journaling or to read more than you normally do. I know I've been, the last 4 or 5 months, I've been writing a book on domestic abuse, and COVID's given me a little bit of extra time for writing that I wouldn't have had in the past as much. So writing is something that I enjoy to do at times, and I find that rewarding and a good thing to keep kind of a productive routine. For professionals, maybe doing training, online trainings is a good time. If you have a license where you're required to go to training, like if you're a dentist or a doctor or a medical professional, you maybe have some additional time to do that. And music is important too. I mean, something as simple as listening to music, or, you know, my girlfriend and I over the weekend, we were dancing in her kitchen and stuff and listening to Siri. And so to try to get out of the routine and create some new things that are fun and rewarding, I think is good in these difficult times for sure.
Yeah, yep. And just, you know, doing our best to continuously remember to breathe, right? And just take the time to just also turn off and slow down, or play some very calm music. we talked about meditation apps and different ways to meditate, but I think anytime you have the chance to slow down, it's worthwhile, especially when we're running so fast all day and all night. It seems like for, this longer period of time, which is just not sustainable, you're going to crash. And so, be aware of that and be, aware of yourself getting to those points of no return where you really go off the deep end and you're not presenting the best version of yourself, and take the time just to breathe.
There's a breathing technique I'd love to go over here because we could just do it in like a minute or two. And for any of the viewers, it's such a healthy thing to do. But anytime you're stressed or you notice that you're offended or challenged or you have anxiety, there's a simple kind of 3 steps technique of, and I'll just model it real briefly, but I'll explain it first. 4 seconds deep inhalation, holding it for 7 seconds, and releasing on 8. And I'll do 2 of them. I do like 6 in a row, and we won't do, for lack of time here, we won't do 6. But they're easy to do because you could do them in the bathroom, driving in your car, you could do them at work, but they look something like this. I'll do one more round. I learned this technique in a training I went to several years ago, and I've used it in my personal life, and it works very well. And what this does, if you do like 6 times of the deep inhalations, or you do it 10 times, is it increases the serotonin level we have in our brains, which calms and relaxes us. It's a very effective thing anytime you're feeling upset or anxious. I've had a lot of clients use this and report that it's been quite helpful to them. Easy to use, free, doesn't take a lot of time, but very effective. And a few months ago, I had a young client that was coming in. I was teaching this technique, and I was thrilled. And he said, "I learned this on my phone a few weeks ago." He said, "I do it." And he had the exact technique on his phone. And I don't remember the name of it, but it was the same thing, the 4 seconds, 7, and the 8. And so he said he had been using it for a while to success too. So I thought that was really cool.
So breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and then on the 8th second of the hold, release, right?
No, it's deep inhalation 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and then slow release for 8 seconds.
Oh, wow.
For anyone that's viewing, they can just write it down. 4, 7, 8, all seconds. Deep inhalation in, hold for 7 seconds.
Release.
Release on 8.
Slowly. Yeah, that'll calm you down really quick.
Beautiful
That'll
technique
do the
to
trick.
do.
Yeah. It's amazing what just even, I try to be personally, now I'm going into my personal stories. I try to have a personal, exercise routine as well. And I will slack on that for multiple days at a time. And, it's just amazing. Like last night, right before I went to bed, I was like, screw it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right now. And I did it. And it just took a couple minutes, like literally like 1 or 2 minutes of pretty intense exercise. Like really, I can feel the difference today. Like I really can. And when I do it like consistently day after day, I feel a lot better. And it's literally just a couple of minutes. Like it does not take that long to really impact your mental health and well-being on a regular basis. It's really that discipline of having the routine of doing it. I'm trying to do it, incorporate my routines in the morning. But, as we all get up and, start hustling, sometimes it can be difficult. But I think that discipline is really, important today, and something that a lot of people are struggling with.
Yeah, so I know Flagstaff is a great community for yoga. There's so many fantastic yoga businesses, and there's programs for recovery in yoga in Flagstaff. But yoga is something you can do at home on your own. If you have a mat, you can do 20 minutes, half an hour of yoga to really, especially for older individuals, we start to stiffen up a little bit, just a stretching routine. My partner stretches on a regular basis, and it's so healthy for her. And then I try to do it too, and I think it's good for my cycling. The other thing is that I want to mention is for our athletes in Flagstaff, because we have so many, is if you have an event that you might sign up for, say in July or August, that sometimes it makes it easy for your routine of training to prepare for the event that may be a month or 2 months out. And so that's very rewarding for some people to give meaning and purpose, to try to, feel better, but also to increase their performance level through training. So that may be a good thing. I know for me, I have a mountain bike race that's coming up, actually, that starts and ends in Flagstaff in late May. So I knew about that a couple months ago, and it's helped me kind of prepare and train for that. Something that, I do sometimes in training, but I also think about it sometimes in some idle time. And I've got some friends that, a couple of them that may do that race as well. And that's kind of cool. A way of connecting maybe through the phone or through a text message or something that's important that's coming up. But once again, like structure and the exercises you mentioned, Adam, it's so healthy for us.
Right. Maybe, look at this, for our viewers as a real chance, as an opportunity to dive into the things you really want to expand. This is a time of growth. Even though it's a time of madness and chaos, it's also a time of growth, and it can be positive or negative or just neutral. But, really think about like what areas you want to really focus on in these coming weeks, and improve your mastery of, and work towards it, And I know that's easier said than done. And I'm speaking from a household with no kids and no real major stresses, knock on wood for myself. I'm not, I know a lot of folks in our community that are struggling a lot more than myself right now. And it's hard. It's definitely hard. But I think it's so important that individuals today take the time to really master their own well-being, so that they can be the strongest and bring them the best versions of themselves forward for themselves and their families and everything they're doing during this extremely stressful time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the parents, because I think there's something here about the substance use. It's many years working in the field. I've really worked with a lot of parents that will sometimes use substance around their children or around their teens and think there's not a problem. And probably what we see most commonly dealing with in Flagstaff is people that are drinking or smoking sometimes in their homes. And I would say, even if your kids might not see you, I think that parents are more on point in their kind of decision making, and they're better parents when they're clean and sober as opposed to parents that are maybe impaired because they've had a few too many drinks or under the influence. I mean, think about it. I know people sometimes say, oh, I smoke pot, but it doesn't hurt my children. Well, certainly there's no intention to hurt your children. But if your child gets injured and you need to drive them over to the hospital, you may be putting them in harm's way because you're having to get behind the wheel impaired by cannabis. So that's the kind of things that sometimes we don't think about. And, a sober parent is just almost always, I would say, better than a using parent. And, as a wise client once told me, those kids, their little eyes are like tape recorders. Like they're learning our behaviors by what they observe and watch over time. So we want to model safe, healthy behaviors, not only for ourselves, but for our kids too, for sure.
Right. Absolutely. So maybe, for folks who are struggling, really thinking about, I'm just trying to think what that turning point is. Is it like, I guess, there's probably 100 different approaches to this, I can imagine, but I can also imagine just thinking about where you want to be, and just, focusing, having that drive. And I know how important the drive is for people. If they just had a reason or a purpose, then they wouldn't maybe fall off to the sides, right? So just, really identifying what you're driving towards. We can get real complacent in society, working our normal jobs and watching the years go by, right? And the weeks and the months. And so now that everything's kind of paused and just everything's kind of just dropped to the ground, it's like, well, what do you want to do? And what emotions haven't you dealt with that are now coming up and really taking front and center of your life?
And so in recovery, for people that abstain, if they were in an unhealthy pattern of use, or they had a substance use disorder, they developed an addiction, when they quit, oftentimes people, this is a very common dynamic, will get flooded with emotions that come because they've been sometimes numbing them for months or years. Emotions will come forward. So to have an avenue to be able to express your emotions to a family member or a friend or a support group is a real important thing for healing, and to work through some of those to try to heal them in a healthy way rather than to try to numb them through an unhealthy way with substance use.
Brad, we're almost getting up to an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time and also remind the public that if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are and what your concerns are and any questions you might have for Brad while we have him on the line.
Yeah.
On that topic that we were just talking about, I'm curious what your thoughts are, you know, for someone who has trauma from a young age, being that teen, being that youth in a house where the dad or the mother was smoking pot or drinking alcohol or just wasn't 100% there for the child, and they have trauma from that, and they're now, you know, 35, 45, even older, right, or of any age. What practices or what specific routines or exercises would you recall, or what would you recommend for that person in trying to overcome emotions that are so deep?
Yeah. So a lot of times with that scenario you're presenting is the child can develop into an adult that experiences abandonment because the parent wasn't there consistently just because the substance use, they were checked out, or maybe they were at the bar 3 or 4 nights a week and just didn't come home till late. There's a lot of different scenarios, but one of the best resources I know to work on issues of parental substance use that may have caused neglect to you as a child and then you become adult is the ACOA meetings, the program. It's a national program that stands for Adult Children of Alcoholics, but ACOA will take members also from drug addictions or other mental health problems of a parent. And I know Flag has 7 a week. They have men-only meetings, they have women-only meetings, and some mixed gender meetings. They're free, like you can contribute $1 to a meeting if you want, but they have a lot of literature that works on healing. Another resource that ACOA uses is called the 14, it's the laundry list of ACOA, and you can actually Google it on your computer and it'll come up, and there are a couple of sentences or different behavior characteristics that we sometimes develop in adulthood that can be a little bit different, like abandonment, resentment of authority figures,
Self-worth,
anxiety, self-worth. There's just a number of things, but sometimes being in a support group with like-minded people that you can process your emotions and kind of have your back or trust, and you can do so anonymously, can lead to great growth and healing. ACOA also has a big book. There's literature that developed that you can read through, that I've had several clients ever referred to ACOA programs or to read their big book that's written by insight from professional counselors in writing it. Just an excellent resource. Once again, though, that's a national organization. They have a lot of books and workbooks that sometimes people can work on their own too, as well, that ACOA can distribute.
That's great.
And counselors are also very good with that too, Adam. Counselors with a lot of experience and have worked with substance use should be very, very familiar with ACOA and abandonment and how that affects adults, for sure, because it can come up if you've been traumatized. How it shows up a lot of times is when you have conflict as an adult, and then you might project your unhealed issues onto your partner without even being consciously aware that you're doing so. In a program like a counselor could teach you this, but a program like ACOA will help you learn this dynamic so you can pull back from projecting your issues onto someone else and also work on healing them over time in an organized forum.
That's powerful stuff. There's a question from Noelia, and she writes, "Can you share breathing techniques for little kids?" And thanks for that question. It's a great question.
It is a great question for sure. I don't know if I have any specifics for little kids. I think the one that we worked on, the 478, will also work with teens or children. And then I want to say too, I know in the meditation groups I've been in, I know there's youth that are in there sometimes, maybe not children, but teens for sure. And I think parents that meditate sometimes are very open to teaching the techniques, even if it's a brief 5 or 10 minute meditation. One of the things that I would guide to do is to go online. There is hundreds of different, if you Google meditations for children, I don't know if you'll get hundreds for children, but you'll get some. But for adults, there's many different kind of YouTube presentations that you can go in, and they'll kind of teach you exactly how to meditate, whether you desire to do one for an hour or you want to do one for 5 minutes.
And, just a personal story about this topic, as a child myself, my dad would always tell me at night to, as I'm going to sleep, to take 20 deep breaths and to count with every exhale that number, 1, 2, and really visualize it, popping up in my brain. And typically by 15, 16, you're already asleep. But that, from a young age for me, really taught me to meditate before I had a clue as to what that even meant, before I even knew what the word meditate was. And so for me personally, I didn't have an active mind, but, and a lot of times I would just fall asleep after a while. But for the times that my mind was more active and I was struggling to go to sleep, it helped me, really connect back to my breath and calm down and relax myself, especially in the time trying to go to sleep, right?
Yeah.
So that could be a really simple thing that, parents can do with their kids that, for one, helped me very much.
I'd say for the kids, that's a great technique, Adam. Thanks for sharing it. So breathing is really good. It'll create relaxation and grounding, but so can cardiovascular exercise when you're done. And then doctors and psychiatrists can also prescribe medication that help people calm and relax. But we need to be careful about that because we can get addicted to some of the medications intended to help with anxiety. Some of the benzodiazepine class medications like Klonopin and Xanax, people sometimes love the effects of those, the relaxation that they get, which is short term, but they can become dependent on those over time. And there can be a myriad of different problems that can result if you're get addicted or abuse benzodiazepines.
Brad, let me ask you this. I know we're going a little bit on a tangent from our original focus for tonight's conversation, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about like best practices for kids, playing games and watching videos. Is there a certain hour or a certain best practice that says, 4 hours before one wants to be in bed, they should turn off completely? Or, I know that these phones can be very stimulating to the brain and almost operate subconsciously to keep us alert and active and firing in our minds.
A
Do
couple
you have
of
any
things.
thoughts on that?
A couple of things I've heard, like the watching computers or television or smartphones is not good to do an hour before bed, because I've read some studies a long time ago that people don't sleep as deeply, or they'll take a longer time to fall asleep. We've been watching television, so I'd say a minimum of cutting that off an hour before going to bed. Maybe longer would be better. And then I think the other thing with the video games that I would caution the audience on is what is compulsive use of video games. The DSM-5 has recently, in the last year or two, created a new diagnostic category or code for compulsive video gaming. So this would be, compulsion is when we do an activity over and over and over again and absorbs a lot of our time. And the problem sometimes is the time that we put into compulsive behavior takes away time that we put in other healthier behaviors, right? So I would say if someone was using video games 4, 5, 6 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, to me, that's a lot of time that they could be pouring into something else. And I'll sometimes get clients that are 25 or 26 years old, and they'll play video games sometimes for 4 to 7 or 8 hours. And it's like, I can't imagine them having the amount of time to do that, but some enjoy it. The technology, the video games of today are much more advanced than probably engaging. What I grew up with.
Right. Although the ones you grew up with were still really cool. They could easily do 4 or 5 hours.
Defender and Pac-Man and Asteroids and stuff.
That's right. Original Mario. Anyways, Brad, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I want to maybe start wrapping this up and just give you another chance to offer any words of wisdom in closing. Yeah. And also maybe, Brad, one more thing, just also if you have any openings and any, pitch, for clients that might want to come speak with you and work through you, maybe circle back to that one more time.
Yeah, our practice at Mountain Counseling, we're across the street from the hospital, easy to find on Schweitzer Canyon. We have 3 counselors that work there. We've Mark McLaughlin's a licensed counselor, and Amy Dissell works there, and I do a little bit of clinical work there too. And so just call us if you want some help. We'd be happy to schedule a individual session in Zoom or telephonic. Our number is 600-0664. And we have not closed our doors since COVID started, but we've definitely had a substantial reduction in business, like a lot of other agencies, I think, just because of the social prohibitions.
And
I would just want to say for the folks, hang in there. COVID is difficult, it's challenging, but be creative. Use your creativity to create some new routines, maybe try some activities. You know, that Flagstaff meditation group, maybe reach out and try meditating if you've never done it. And I've had feedback from some folks recently that said Zoom sometimes makes like a mental health appointment more comfortable. Like if someone had a social anxiety of going into a counseling office, they feel more comfortable sometimes being able to do it from their home. So that's an example of something that maybe come out of this that's positive from COVID. But you know, stay productive. If you're feeling anxious or depressed, rather than thinking about why am I feeling this way, I would encourage you to think about how can I cope with it, because the how is gonna create action for you than trying to spend too much time figuring it all out and brooding around in our brain. You know, how is more of an action statement, maybe reaching out friends or families.
And know that you're not alone, you know, and that what you're going through is completely normal, and it shouldn't be, you know, something that you view with a negative lens as a problem. You know, these are all things that us humans experience throughout life, and there's no shame or any harm in reaching out. And there's great services in our community from what, you know, Flagstaff Mountain Counseling and all the others that you can find on the Flagstaff Resources page, where you can also find 4 of the programs provided to our community by Flagstaff Mountain Counseling and yourself, Brad. So definitely check that out from home. But Brad, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. I believe you'll be coming on again.
I think there's interest in possibly doing a presentation on domestic abuse at some point in time too.
I think that'd be very beneficial to all of us. And so we'd love to have you on again. Thank you. Good night, everybody. And thanks for tuning in.
I appreciate the opportunity, Adam. Thank you so much.
Okay, I just ended the live stream. Perfect. Now we'll end the